presence of women at top levels of corporate and political leadership. Jones was tapped as CEO because of her background and expertise in the business and political world, as well as her ability to engage, collaborate, and lead. As co-founder and former president of Dan Jones and Associates, a successful public opinion and market research firm for 35 years, Jones helped lead and manage the company while serving on numerous community and company boards. Jones is an experienced and highly regarded researcher, specializing in qualitative research, having conducted hundreds of focus groups throughout the country for a variety of industries since 1980. Senator Jones served in the Utah legislature for 14 years, serving in leadership positions for 12 of those years. She was a member of the Utah House of Representatives from 2000 to 2006 and was elected to the Utah Senate in 2006 and serving until 2014. 8 years there, including serving as the first female leader in either party and in either house. While in the Utah legislature, Jones was a member of various committees, including public education, higher education, health and human services, judiciary, economic development, law enforcement, government operations, and executive appropriations. Please welcome Senator Patricia Jones.
Thank you. It's so nice. Can you hear me? All right. You have better ears than I do. So it's such a pleasure to be with all of you. I'm morphing my talk because I didn't know how long I would take, but apparently it's just about 10 minutes, so we'll make it very quick. The Women's Leadership Institute was started about 15 months ago, so we're just taking baby steps right now. The mission of the Women's Leadership Institute is twofold. One is to get more women in politics, to run, and hopefully to win. And secondly is to elevate the stature of women's leadership in corporate boards and in companies. And I understand many of you are businesswomen and some are stay-at-home moms, and so it's a great variety. The Women's Leadership Institute is really helping women understand how important confidence is and feeling comfortable in training as they step into leadership roles. It is business-led. Our offices are at the Chamber of Commerce, and it's been great being there. And I think that has been very, very helpful to have the support of our business leaders. Secondly, we have many men on our board. Half of our board is men, so we believe that men are important advocates and allies of women. And that has also been extremely helpful as we move this ball forward. And thirdly, we have a very positive approach in moving women's leadership forward. It's great for business. In the research business that I was in for so many years, I saw the importance of women in making decisions. In fact, women make 85% of the consumer decisions. And did you know that? Even with automobile buying and so forth. So it's very important for companies to understand why leadership is important to the bottom line, the ROI, and so forth, and the company reputation. And so that's what we're doing. It's really fun. I wanted to invite you all to an event that we have on May 11th in the evening. We're targeting millennials, and the reason I'm mentioning this is you all seem to be of that age, and we would love to have you just come to this event. We have a great speaker, Betsy Myers from Boston, and she will be talking about why it's important to elevate women. There will be great food and spirits if you like, or soft drinks, live music, and you do have to register. We have our website if you'd like to write this down, WLI, Women's Leadership Institute, UT of Utah.com. But you do need to register. We're capping this at 200. It is $50, but that includes all of those needs. So we will have prizes from City Creek. They've already donated some things, so it'll be fun. And we'll, I guess, be doing some tweets and Twitter, all that kind of stuff. We have millennials on our board, and they're telling me. What's that? WLIUT. This is .com. This is a great way for you to network with other young professionals. Men and women are invited, by the way. And some of us old people will be there too. So just know you won't be alone, but it'll be fun. So let me just first of all express my appreciation to all of you for what you're doing. It was such a treat to walk in here and see just, there was a lot of laughter and a lot of of talking, and that is always great when you get women together, doing great things together and having great goals. I am going to advocate for the importance of education for women. On the Hill, when I was serving for 14 years as a legislator, I was on all of the education committees, and oftentimes I was the only woman on committees. And this is why it's important to also have women engage in education, but also in politics. So if you don't mind, I'm going to spend my time, my precious time here, explaining why it's important for women to run for office. And these are things that you don't hear very often. I think women oftentimes think politics is just nasty and negative, and it can be, especially if you listen to the national, what's going on nowadays. But it's so critical for the things that you are caring about to have not only a voice, but a vote. It's absolutely critical. Right now in our legislature, we have 15% women. And that means when you break that into committees, there are many committees that have no women, and they're discussing bills like, the HPV virus. They're talking about education. They're talking about guns in schools and so forth. Very common. And I know, having done research for so many years, that women feel very differently and are more knowledgeable about many of those issues. So I would like to just quickly go through why you should run for office and why you should encourage other women, young and medium age and even older women, to run for office. So I will start this very quickly with what if, okay? So what if you could learn how the government system works? What if you needed help somewhere? Maybe a mother or someone you care for needs a wheelchair, or maybe one of your loved ones needs long-term care, or assisted living, or it's any variety of different issues and services. When you serve in the legislature, when you serve in public office, you learn the system. You learn who to call. You learn what services are available out there. This is invaluable for women because generally women become caregivers at some point in their lives, and it's extremely important to know where you can find information. So that is something that greatly helped me. You can learn to build relationships with key influencers. So if you need something done, like your cable TV goes off, which happened to us at a Utah game, that was not happy at my house. But I tried to fix it, I tried to go down and get help, but I was able to call the lobbyist that I knew, and he helped me get that fixed right away. So you can get feedback. You can get people to help you right away. The third one is educational experiences, and I'm really happy that you're looking at education as one of your frameworks here and what you're focusing on. Because serving in the legislature, I can say, even when I graduated from the U, I can say that serving in the legislature was equivalent to at least a master's degree. Because you have to learn budgets, you're learning a broad array of topics from, I was on many committees, but learning budgets and learning higher education, public education, and helping in the services, and GoEd, economic development, and all of those committees, you just learn more than you can ever even imagine, and you have to make decisions on those, and you have to know how those things work. Building your confidence. One of the things that employers are looking for right now that they're having difficulty finding, there are 4 areas. One is speaking ability, okay? The ability to communicate orally with people. Number 2 is writing. That is a skill that is becoming a lost art. And our employers are really, really looking for that. Number 3 is creative thinking and solving. Problem solving is the 4th one. So those are the 4 skills that are so much in demand today, that our incoming workforce just really don't have many of the skills. This is according to some research that I recently did throughout the state of Utah. So just know that doing all 4 of those things, you can hone your skills when you are a public servant. So it's really helpful in that way. I would say another one is humility. When I sat on the Health and Human Services Committee, a lot of people would bring up maybe their autistic children. And it's so difficult to do that. I mean, it's hard to find parking in the middle of winter, and it's very difficult to to get there and to wait for a long period of time for your turn to speak. But to watch these families and the people that really needed help was very, very empathetic. It made me feel empathetic toward them. And then I mentioned honing the critical skills. The opportunities to serve on boards. You know, I had served on many boards before I served in the legislature, but I will tell you that serving in politics was the key to opening so many doors for me. It was absolutely the difference in my life. Whether you win or not, but just running for office lets people know that you're a leader. You're a natural leader if you're willing to throw your hat in the ring and work hard and say, I'm ready to do this kind of work. It's very, very much puts you in a different kind of level. So I would strongly encourage you to do that. Being a role model for people, especially for girls. You know, this hit home to me when my granddaughter, who graduated from high school this past year, she ran for student body office and she was a student body president. And so she spoke at her commencement last year, and she was on the big Jumbotron at the, what is it now, the Vivint Center? Whatever it is today. And I said to her, Jenna, I'm so proud of you. And she said, Grandma, you know why I did it? She worked on all 5 of my campaigns, and she knocked on doors with me. And she said that's why she did. So to be a kind of role model, I never thought of myself as a role model. But apparently I was, at least to her. And so that's important, that we do become role models for our young girls, that they can see what they can be. Learn to know your neighbors. So going door to door, I know my neighbors. I know the streets in my area, and that helps you with security. You know, believe it or not, it helps you understand what makes your community tick, and to get to know people is really important to do that. It makes you a more kind person. When you're driving, you tend to be a little kinder. You let people in, you know, you give them a break, because guess what, they might vote for you next time. Nobody will ever admit that, but it's absolutely true. Involvement in the community activities. I was able, for instance, just to take part in the fire ops program, where I had to go through this similar training as our firemen and firewomen, and boy, I learned I couldn't be one. I have claustrophobia, and that was, I mean, just activities like that are just so numerous. Self-discovery. How many of us grow older, which you aren't yet, but you will someday, and say, I wonder who I am. What makes me tick? What are my values? I can tell you, when you run for office, you learn very quickly what your values are, what's important to you, because you can't sit on the fence for very long, okay? And so you really do have to mull things over and find out what's really important to you. And then the other thing is you become a very interesting person. All of a sudden, you know, you're at a party or at a gathering and people are asking you questions, and that's important too. Career enhancement is another one that, man, I'll tell you, you just get all kinds of offers from that. And then it forces you to work out when you go door to door. I used to lose 10 pounds every time I ran for office, so that was you know, and Representative Becky Edwards said it best. She said, you know, as women, we would stand in front of a train to protect our children. And she says, why wouldn't we do that in politics, when in fact so many of those issues affect our children and our families? And so that was something that really stood with me. And then finally, the chance to really make a difference with legislation. There were a number of bills. In fact, you know, as a Democrat, I passed 80% of my bills, so don't let anybody tell you that Democrats can't accomplish anything. That is absolutely not true. So regardless of your political affiliation, you can have a chance to really make a difference. I worked on public education funding for 12 years, 12. Like, I mean, I can't tell you how many hours I put in that. And I learned now, since I'm out, I retired 2 years ago, that they're looking at that very bill to seriously look at it this next session. So stay tuned on that one. Tomorrow's our first meeting on it. But there are other bills that, you know, I worked on that I'm very proud of that, you know, made a difference to seniors and to help and those sorts of things. And it's really interesting to see those things come to fruition And you can have that same kind of experience where you can feel like you have made a difference in other people's lives. So I think I've taken more than my 10 minutes. But I would be happy to answer a couple of questions if anybody has some. Okay, you're all running for office.
Is it your organization that does the Women Run thing?
The Real Women Run is the YWCA. We work with them, and they are great because they pass. I mean, they kind of throw out their net and bring in a lot of women that are interested in running. We have what we call our political development series that we started last September. It went for 6 months. We'll run it again starting in September, where we have a cohort of women who come for free. We don't charge them, except for they pay for their lunch. But we give them in-depth training as a cohort, so they're working together. They get to know each other over 6 months. So we had 28 women from throughout the state of Utah, from Logan to Cedar City, who would come up. We'd all meet once a month, and we had great training. About half of them have already filed for office. I'm very proud of that. One of them's running for Congress. It's nonpartisan. They get very good in-depth training, and it gives them the confidence, and it's so fun to watch them as they're planning to run for office. So we'll start that again in September. Go on our website if you're interested in that. I'd love to see you all there. That would be amazing. You don't have to run, but I think you will when you're finished. So. Okay. Well, thank you all so much. Thank you for what you're doing, and good luck to you. If I can ever help you in any way, please let me know. I'd love to help you. I don't know how to cook.
Can I get a picture of you too?
Ready to?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for having us.
Oh, no, it's Yen. Makes no difference.
One right here. Okay, our next speaker is Yen Nguyen with the YWCA. I'm going to just give you her little bio here. Yen is the Volunteer and In-Kind Donations Director at the YWCA Utah. During her time in this position, she has restructured the volunteer program, leading to a 300% increase in volunteer hours year over year. She utilized her skills obtained during racial justice education to design an orientation and training program that reflects the mission of the YWCA for inclusions of diverse populations. She has coordinated departmental needs with skills offered by volunteers, increasing the satisfaction of both parties, thus prolonging the volunteers' commitment to the program by 6 months or more. She has also created a system identifying an outreach to private and public entities to fulfill department needs. This system saved tens of thousands of dollars each year, which was reallocated back into client-centered programs. So she's done some really awesome stuff over at YWCA, and we're really looking forward to hearing her insight.
Thank you so much for having me here tonight. So I'm going to talk, well, first, the YWCA. The mission statement is eliminating racism, empowering women, and promoting peace, justice, and freedom for all. That's like a mouthful, right? So as long as you're helping someone, you are fulfilling that mission statement. Our work is in so many different places, women's empowerment. Also, we run the largest domestic violence shelter in the state of Utah. And if domestic violence were to go away tomorrow, then we would move on to something else, whatever that community needs are. And so what I wanted to talk about tonight was food insecurity and poverty, hunger within Utah. So very early on in our history, about the 1920s, we actually ran the first indoor, that's a swimming pool, sorry, got my things mixed up, but also in 1920, and the first public cafeteria for women. And it's really just coming in and paying however or whatever you can to have a meal, because that was very much needed in the 20s. And so, what I wanted to really expand on is Utah. So 1 in 6 children in Utah will experience skipping a meal. And then in one in 5 children, they don't know where their next meal is coming from. So when you really think about food and drives and all those other stuff. There's programs like the food bank, or even if you saw the news, like I think it was last week, the VOA, their pantry was empty. There was like one can on the shelf. So when we think about food and giving out things, it's usually November or December. But what about the rest of the year? What about summer? And so just looking at the stats earlier, and with programs as far as the lunch program, so I came here as a refugee, and we benefited a lot from the food stamps and other programs so that our family didn't have to spend that money. So we are able to be where we are today. And I remember having the school breakfast and lunch, and that's when we would eat, is at school. But then summer comes around, and then what do? So even though we have programs in Utah, it's actually the second to the lowest in the nation as far as lunch programs or food programs. And so there's like a lot to do, one, right, just thinking beyond just the winter seasons, because it's wonderful to have all those influx of donations come in, but at the same time, even if they're non-perishable, there's really not a lot of space or storage that we need to consider. And where are we going to put all these things, right? Not to say that it's bad to have all those things, but once again, just to think about the rest of the time. And then also, a few other things that could be done. I think I'd heard earlier that a lot, or some of you may be businesswomen, right? If there's not a program that's designed to give or anything or to volunteer, ask for one. So I want to bring up Even Stevens as an example of a company that has done really well and gone above and beyond to helping try to solve this food insecurity problem. Because how do you really, like, where do you find these families? Right outside of WIC, outside of SNAP. How do you help? And so when Sarah Day, one of the people over at Even Stevens, came to me, their initial plan was, okay, we're gonna make a lot of sandwiches, and then we're going to pass it out in the park. But that very quickly was unsustainable. Because one, where would you find the volunteers to do that? Two, can you get it to the people you need? So she and her team reached out to various nonprofits in the community, so us, VOA, and other places that already have a population. So I think it's very important to have that business relationship and that nonprofit relationship. So basically what they're doing is for every sandwich they sell, they donate the ingredients of a sandwich. So it's not a straight over sandwich, because once again, we can't just take sandwiches every day. And so they put X amount of dollars, and we can buy lettuce or salad or bread, which has made a tremendous difference. Because when we're talking about food, we're also talking about healthy choices, right? And I remember when I first came to the YWCA about 6 years ago, when we had bread donated or anything like that, we would freeze it, and then we would use it. And so it would often be stale or old, but now, because it's in an account, we can order fresh bread every single week. And this is healthy whole grains that we can have for our kids. And then from the business side, I mean, they've opened up 3 stores in here, and they've opened up 2 more, and they're doing 3 more. It's crazy that people are behind this. But in this day and age, you can ask that of your employer, right? That this is what we want. And just not with just food, there's also been different companies where this year was like the first year they decided to, okay, we're going to give our employees X amount of hours to do community service, or we'll allocate X amount of dollars so you can do something. But it didn't come from the top, it came from the people. If you are connected to someone or in a position or even know people within wherever you work and there's not a program, ask for it. Hey, why aren't we doing this? Hey, it might be a good idea to do this. I had a friend last year, we just started our Thanksgiving baskets. It was our first year, so I didn't know what we were going to get. And she worked for a company that has never dabbled in volunteering or giving back of any kind. And we'd mentioned we wanted to do little Thanksgiving baskets for our families at the Y. She brought it up with her employer, and they're like, oh, what a great idea, right? Because it never hurts to ask. And so they challenged the employees to give back. So for every, like, the canned food and stuff like that that you buy, we'll donate the turkey, which is the most expensive thing of those things. So, I mean, there's so many ways, but business, I think, and connecting nonprofits together, I think is a great route to kind of start. So also, I believe it was last month, March or February, there was a hashtag lunch bag event. Did anyone go to that? Yes. And it was something that even Stevens was trying, right? Because once again, as a company, where are they going to find the volunteers to do it? But here we as a nonprofit can actually get together and provide the volunteers or advertise it to our people. And so we all came together at Sustainable Startups, and within like half an hour, it was really quick. We made about 200 sandwiches and kind of just went around. It was more, it wasn't structured in any way, and just handed out sandwiches. And the most shocking part to me was, even though I worked for a domestic violence shelter, even though we work with a homeless population of 250 women and children that we take care of, other agencies are structured a little bit differently. So my friend and I took those sandwiches, we took about 30 of them down to the road home, and they disappeared within seconds. And I was just like, oh my gosh. Like, it was so shocking to me, even though I had been to the road home numerous times for different partnerships. But whereas people are just hungry, and they're like, is that a sandwich? Without even asking. I mean, I could, you know, just asking a complete stranger for food. And that was just such, oh my gosh, you know, a moment for me. And so just, what else are we doing? How else can we help, right? And I don't know, as far as school programs, how we can further expand that, but it goes back to leadership and having women on those boards as well, because maybe sometimes men don't think about it, I don't know, right? You've heard about it in the nation where a lunch lady would be fired for giving lunch to a student. Yeah. Or just what was horrifying to me was another instance where they took the lunch out of the student's hand and throw it in the trash. Yeah. So you've already given it to the student. And so just stuff like that. So that's also, it connects strongly as well to having more women on those boards, because these kids are hungry. You know, there's something we can do about that. So, those are that. Sorry, didn't mean to depress everyone. But there is hope, and that's why. And the easiest way, and now I feel like I'm advertising for Even Stevens, is to just go buy a sandwich, because it's helping so many people. And if you think about that, for every Even Stevens that pops up, there's X amount of communities, right, that they are serving. And if they are able to take it national like they want to, that's a very good route. Or even think about France, and I think where they get penalized if the company, like, you know, a huge market chain or whatnot, doesn't donate that leftover food. So hopefully that can come about from someone wanting to do it and not having to be the point where they're forced to do it, right, is using those places to kind of disseminate the food and getting it to the people that really need it. Because we all need help at some point in our lives. And that's also why I started working for the YWCA, because I wanted to give back to all the people that gave to us, took us to field trips and field trips and different programs and things that I otherwise would not have been able to do without volunteers, without the community, and it's just us helping each other out. So, thank you.
Thank you so much for coming. Really appreciate it. Oh, with me? Yeah, sure.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm pleased to introduce Lori Hoffman. Lori Hoffman is a certified sexual assault counselor and presenter educator on human trafficking and sexual slavery. Her master's thesis, Bridging the Gaps, Why Utah Needs More Services for Sexual Slaves and Trafficked Victims, focuses directly on what services are currently available for victims of trafficking and what services are needed. Lori is currently working with the West Valley City Police Department, writing articles on the difficulty of attaining prosecutions in Utah for human trafficking. In addition, she is working with a task force of experts in human trafficking to create a strategic plan to tackle the ever-increasing problem of slavery in our state. Lori sits on the board of directors of the Utah Coalition Against Sexual Assault, Planned Parenthood of Utah, Law-Related Education, and the Utah Cultural Alliance. She holds a Bachelor of Science from the University of Utah in Health Promotion and Education, and a Master's from Westminster College in Community Leadership. She is a mentor at Westminster College for undergraduate students whose studies focus on sexual assault and human trafficking. Please welcome Lori Hoffman to present on human trafficking.
And I get to follow up with the really fun topic. Yen, you think you had a depressing ending? Oh boy. So first of all, let's talk a little bit about what human trafficking is and what human trafficking is not. Human trafficking and sexual slavery are global problems. Currently, 137 countries across the world are involved in some form of human trafficking and sexual slavery. We have 30 million slaves worldwide at this time. That's more slaves than at any time in human history. I want you to think about that. That is more slaves than at any time in human history. At the height of the Atlantic slave trade, which was in the 1800s, there were approximately 6.5 million slaves. So today, slavery is illegal worldwide. We have 4.6 times the number of slaves than we had when slavery was legal. Okay, I want you to keep that in mind. That's a terrifying number. Okay, and I kind of have my slides memorized, so I don't have to do this anymore. But I do need to get to the official definition of trafficking. So how many of you think you know what trafficking is? How many of you think it's movement? Raise your hand if you think it's movement. Okay, here's the official definition of trafficking. Trafficking does not mean movement. The term trafficking actually means being forced, coerced, or threatened to do something you would not want to do. Traffickers often threaten people's families as a method of enslavement. Human trafficking at its core is a fundamental denial of basic human rights. I want you to think about that. It's a fundamental denial of basic human rights. As a human being, you have a right to be free. It is rooted in control and ownership, and sexual exploitation and forced labor are the most common forms of trafficking worldwide. There are 4 different types of slavery. The most prominent and the one that is most titillating for the media, of course, is sexual slavery, but there's also agricultural slavery, people who are forced to work on farms. There's labor trafficking, that's people who are forced to perform construction or fracking or working in the oil fields for no pay. And then there's domestic slavery. That's people who are forced to work in someone's home and don't receive any pay and are chained in the basement at the end of the evening. So why is this happening? This is happening because trafficking is extremely profitable. Trafficking and sexual slavery are the second most profitable criminal activities on the planet. Did you hear that? The second most profitable criminal enterprise on the planet. Only the illegal drug trade is currently making more money. Trafficking and slavery have eclipsed all illegal gun and illegal arms sales worldwide in terms of profitability. Current figures estimate that $1.6 trillion, or 2.7% of the global GDP, is made on trafficking and slavery. When I started my research, which was in 2014, now we're into 2016, they were saying that it would eclipse all drug sales within 5 years. Now the estimate is 1 to 3 years. So within 1 to 3 years, human trafficking and sexual slavery will be the most profitable criminal enterprise on the planet. Let me say that again. Within 1 to 3 years, human trafficking and sexual slavery will be the most profitable criminal enterprise on the planet. Unlike drugs or guns, human beings can be sold over and over again. A slave's only escape is to be rescued, to run, or to die. That's the only way you get out. Trafficking and slavery are slated to become, as I've said, the most profitable global enterprise within 1 to 3 years. So let's talk about Utah. What does Utah need to help trafficking victims? We have a desperate need for a building or a facility for trafficking victims. Currently, when victims are found, we have absolutely no place to put them. There is federal money available which will allow them to stay in a hotel or a motel for anywhere from 3 to 5 days, but after that the federal money is cut off. Experts across the state of Utah all agree that we need some sort of a facility to place victims of trafficking. And all of you are probably thinking, let's just use the YWCA. The YWCA will not take them. They are a security risk for the people who are already there. Trafficking victims need to have a very, very intensely secure facility because traffickers do not easily let go of their slaves. They are making money off of their slaves. Unlike domestic violence, you're not usually making money off of the person that you are abusing. In the case of trafficking, you are making money off the person you have enslaved. So they don't want to give up their product because they lose their income if they give up that product. We have a need for better education for the public, for service providers, and especially for legislators, because our legislators truly believe it's not happening here. We need a need for more accurate numbers of Utah trafficking victims. So I will give you the current statistics since 2012. 200 victims. That is not even possible. The reason there's only been 200 victims that have been identified is those are the victims who have been found by law enforcement, by victim advocates, and those that have escaped and have come forward. There is a tremendous stigma if you are a victim of trafficking, and it takes victims years to admit what's happened to them, and even many more years to try and find services to get any kind of help that they desperately need. And finally, we need a common language to describe trafficking victims, especially in the case of women who are sex slaves. Tell me what the word is that you use. Prostitute. We have to stop using that term. We have to stop saying that, well, it's the oldest profession on the planet. That doesn't make it right. That term is dehumanizing, it's degrading, and by using that term, we allow the industry to continue. They are sex slaves. They don't make a choice to be there. They have a pimp, they have Johns, and they are responsible for using their body to provide money to someone else. If you think that they get every dime when they've been with a John, you're wrong. They don't. So we need to stop using the word prostitute. We also need to stop calling children prostitutes. Children do not make a choice to be prostitutes. Currently, there are 15 states across the United States that have made a very brave decision, and their decision was to no longer allow the term child prostitute to be used anywhere in any of their code. Utah is not one of them. Utah is one of 35 states across the United States that still uses the term child prostitute. And those of us who are victim advocates argue that children are being exploited. They don't choose at 12 years old to become a prostitute. So, what do we need you to do as the Junior League? Well, one of the things that many states do across the country is mandatory posting. If you go into any kind of public restrooms, you will see permanently placed posters that talk about if you are a victim, here are 1-800 numbers that you can call and get help. And they'll have tear-off slips on those. Utah doesn't have that anywhere. Our international airport does not post that. We are one of the few international airports in the United States of America that does not post anything for victims of trafficking. We need mandatory posting. That means we need the legislature to agree to mandatory posting. We need to identify more victims, and we need to provide more resources for victims. Currently, we have victims that need education, mental health care, physical health care, job training skills, and job placement. We don't have all those services currently. We have organizations that are working across the state and doing everything they can, but we need a coordinated effort to put all of those services and all of the providers together. What can the Junior League do to make the greatest impact? Legislation. And I cannot keep saying that to you. You can be the voice on the Hill. You can be the women who lead the charge. You can be the voice for those that are voiceless. We need our laws to come in line with federal legislation. Currently, Utah does not follow federal code when it comes to the prosecution of traffickers. And that's why in our state, many people who should be prosecuted for trafficking are not. And I'll give you 2 examples of that. The man who kidnapped Elizabeth Smart, she was trafficked. She was forced, threatened, or coerced to leave her home in the middle of the night, and she was basically made his sex slave. She was 14 years old at the time. What did we charge him with? Kidnapping. We did not ever call him what he was, a trafficker. We did not charge him with trafficking, and why not? Because we don't have laws on our books that would have allowed us to call him a trafficker or charge him with trafficking. So, at some point, he will be up for parole. When you have strong trafficking laws on your books, if you are charged with trafficking, you are never, never eligible for parole. Period. And let's talk about another grand trafficker that we had in the state of Utah. And he was actually brought up on charges of tax evasion. The same RICO laws that went after Al Capone actually went after this man as well. And he would be living on the Utah-Arizona border, and he was running a polygamist organization. Can anybody tell me what his name is?
Warren Jeffs.
Warren Jeffs. Warren Jeffs is probably one of the biggest traffickers in human history. He was moving women, he was moving children, he was forcing them to get married, he was forcing them to have sex, he was forcing them to leave their quote-unquote husbands and marry someone else and have sex with them. What did we get Warren Jeffs on? We got Warren Jeffs on tax evasion. Warren Jeffs is a trafficker. So we need to have tougher laws that say we're not going to accept that men can do this to children and to women. We need to have our laws in line with federal legislation. It's so important. And you can make a difference. You can make a huge difference. You are a voice to be reckoned with. You don't know how tough you are. I remember the old days. I am a junior leaguer, very proud one. And I remember when we had a committee called Public Issues and Advocacy, and we would come on the Hill, and those legislators would literally turn and go the other direction because it was like, oh Lord, it's those women, and they're going to beat me down, and I'm going to have to vote on whatever it is that they want, and I'm not going to have any say in the matter because if I try and disagree with them and I go home and tell my wife about it, she's going to force me to go along with those junior league women as well. So, you can be a force again. You need to be a force again. This is an incredibly important issue, and you can make the difference in victims' lives. Thank you.
Yeah, she'll think it's silly.